So good afternoon, and I am calling the meeting of the Arizona Board of Regents to order. We have a quorum, and so I will just proceed. A link to the live stream of the public meeting is available on the board's website under ABOR Live or by going to YouTube and searching ABOR News. Today, we're going to convene an executive session for legal advice and discussion regarding a multi-year employment contract for Kenny Dillingham as head football coach at Arizona State University, and the first amended multiple year employment agreement for Jedd Fisch as head coach of football at the University of Arizona. Following the executive session, the board will reconvene in public session to hear the items on its agenda. Do I have a motion to go into executive session for the aforementioned executive session agenda items?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion does carry. Thank you very much. So good afternoon and welcome back. We convened earlier this afternoon before moving to executive session. So we are now back in public session. And we have the first two items on our agenda are policy revisions for first read and immediate implementation pursuant to ABOR policy 1-202J. So the first item is a review of proposed revisions to ABOR's policy 4-102 non-resident tuition and ABOR policy 4-321 student financial aid regulations for first reading and immediate implementation. John, can you please produce or introduce those items?
Thank you. So we will take these one at a time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The first item, Regents, I am very excited to introduce this item to the board. As you know, Proposition 308 passed earlier this year, providing a pathway for certain non-citizens to receive resident tuition at our universities and to qualify for certain types of financial aid. These are students that live in Arizona and who attend and graduate from Arizona high schools that were previously barred from these benefits due to their immigration status. Today, we are aligning board policy with this new state law so that we can provide these benefits as early as this upcoming semester. We only have a small number of these students in our universities at this time who will qualify for these benefits, but with this change, I think our hope is that that number will dramatically increase over the coming years. With that, I'm happy to take any questions, but the policy is pretty straightforward.
Any? Regent Herbold, and you're muted.
Yeah, the question relates to how many states have done this so far, John. I assume that this is probably occurring at most all states.
Regent Herbold, Chair Manson, I do not know the answer to that. I think it's actually the opposite, that Arizona was somewhat of an anomaly for barring these students for resident tuition and financial aid. And so I think most states are already ahead of us in this, but I have not done a comprehensive survey.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments? Regent Duvall?
Sure. I just want to take a minute for context. So the Board of Regents passed its first policy of support for the Dreamers in 2008. It has been a very tortuous, difficult road, lawsuits, yes, no, then we did half tuition. It has been a long slog, but I do think in addition to being a long thing, it is a moral thing, it's a smart thing, and thanks to the voter of Arizona, now a legal thing. And so I think this is a really momentous moment for the board, for the state, and for these young people that came to the United States, usually with their parents, and have excelled in school and will be job creators and leaders of our future. So I'm delighted with today's news.
Thank you. Regent Brewster?
Yes, Chair Manson, and probably to Director Arnold. I know each university will be able to use the funds in a manner that best meets their specific needs for the applicants and the students they have. I'm just wanting clarification based on our earlier discussions that all three universities are in position starting in the spring semester to take this forward and use this opportunity, as Regent Duvall just said, to better align and bring students into their universities and support the students they have. Are all three universities in a position to start in the spring of 2023 with this initiative?
We have two of the three presidents and Provost Gonzalez on with us, but we've worked directly with the three universities on this policy. And the answer to that is yes. They're very excited to move this forward and to bring these benefits to these students.
Chair Manson, I have a question when you're able.
Yes, absolutely.
My question is for Director Arnold. Director Arnold, are we going to have any sort of communications plan to ensure that qualified students know about this?
Regent Manson, Regent Pacheco, thank you. Excellent question. We are largely relying on the universities to communicate this information. They have much deeper and broader communication reach than we do from the board office. We have already posted frequently asked questions and some other materials on our own website. We've tweeted that information out through our channels. We're working with Aliento and some other local groups to make sure the information that is getting disseminated is correct information. There is still some confusion around this policy and how broad is it and what do these students qualify for? And so we've been answering those questions, but I think each university will envelop this into their own communication strategies.
Thank you.
John, is that policy 4102 and 4321? Because those we're doing together.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Are there any other questions? Oh, Regent Penley?
Thank you, Regent Manson. I just want to second what Regent Pacheco said in her question. And that is, I think as a board, we need to look as well, and John's well aware that I hold this opinion, that when we offer these opportunities to students, promotion really is incumbent upon us. And I think Regent Pacheco's question is absolutely well targeted. And in many cases, I don't think we're taking as seriously as we need to the job to join with the three universities and really promote things like this to the public. So, John, you know my opinion. I just want to second what Regent Pacheco addressed in her question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, I move that the board approve for immediate implementation the proposed revisions to ABOR policy 4-102, non-resident tuition, and ABOR policy 4-321, student financial aid regulations. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. The next item is a review of proposed revisions to ABOR 4-323, tuition waiver scholarships and institutionally supported financial aid programs, student financial aid, for first reading and immediate implementation. John, you're on the floor for this one too.
Thank you, ma'am. And this is another one where I'm very excited to bring this to the regents. As you know, a couple of years ago, we implemented the Arizona Promise program. And at that time, we had very limited support from the state to do that. And so we designed the program to have a fairly limited reach. Students had to qualify for maximum Pell. This last year, we received additional support from the legislature. They moved their support from $7.5 million up to $20 million. And that's going to allow us to expand eligibility for this program from max Pell to any Pell. So with the change today, any student who qualifies for Pell will be eligible for the Arizona Promise program. And based on current enrollment, that just about doubles the number of students who are potentially eligible for this program. Need-based aid is constantly battling with merit aid, and our students are so impressive academically that they generate and earn a lot of merit aid. And so exactly what the costs are around this is difficult. It's a case-by-case basis. But we're comfortable with the 20 million we've received from the state that we can make this change, which is great news for Arizona students. So with that, I'll take any questions.
So do I have questions or comments from the board? Regent Penley?
Thank you very much, Regent Manson. Thanks very much, John, for what you've done on this. I just think it's worth stating, and I know all of you know this, but for the public who may be listening to our broadcast here, that we went into this Promise Scholarship as a way of giving students greater access to higher education and increasing overall state attainment. This is in our interests from a point of view of economic prosperity. Companies that grow up here, companies that move to Arizona, need a highly qualified labor force. We know that we lack sufficient number of college graduates to meet the needs, especially as demands for more education rise. So the Promise Scholarship is designed to really help build economic prosperity. It's also to really address the needs of those families who may say to their son or their daughter, "I'm sorry, daughter, I'm sorry, son, we don't have the money to send you to school here." And it's designed to make price more transparent, something that's always a challenge given misinformation about tuition and about the limited financial aid, which is not true. We have massive financial aid offered by the universities as a result of their decisions to allocate financial aid. So to the public, I would just say this is a big deal. To Governor Hobbs-elect, to Governor-elect Hobbs, to our legislators, I certainly hope that you will join with the board in providing more money for the Promise Scholarship so that we increase attainment in the state of Arizona. Thanks, Chair Mattson.
Thank you, Regent Penley. That was very, very well said, and I appreciate it.
And if I can just add, Chair Manson, we do have a communication strategy around this and Promise in general, and working with each of the universities to ensure that Promise gets embedded in their communication strategies, and the legislature provided us with a little bit of dollars to directly market the Promise program. So we're very excited about this initiative.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, I move that the board approve for immediate implementation the proposed revisions to ABOR Policy 4-323, tuition waiver scholarships and institutionally supported financial aid programs, student financial aid. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Item 3 is Arizona State University's request from the board to approve a multi-year employment contract for Kenny Dillingham as head football coach at ASU. And President Crow, I believe you have the floor. Can I find President Crow?
I don't think he
Is
joined
he
us.
not here? Okay, so who from ASU is presenting this?
I would be glad to present it. I can also get President Crow if you wanted to take the U of A item next.
Christine, I think we're fine if you'd like to
Okay.
present.
Well, I'm pleased to present on behalf of Arizona State University, our new football coach, Kenny Dillingham. He has been the offensive coordinator at University of Oregon, had been an offensive coordinator at 3 other schools previous to that. He is a homegrown product, actually grew up in the Valley and went to ASU. He's our first grad to become our football head coach. A lot of energy, one of the top recruiters, and was up for the top assistant nationally. We are pleased to present him. The base salary will be in the middle of the conference with the bonus based on performance academically and athletically.
Thank you, Christine. Are there comments or questions from board members? Seeing none, I will comment. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much to ASU for keeping the board in the loop as this search progressed and we came to a finalist and a conversation that was very, very helpful in keeping us informed and up to date. I am, the energy and the enthusiasm around this particular hire has been exceptional, and it is very apparent that he is very excited to be, as he says, home. He has done so far, I believe, a very nice job of surrounding himself with assistant coaches who are experienced and well-versed. And I think he brings a tremendous opportunity for increasing Arizona engagement with ASU football and with ASU in general. So I'm enthusiastic about that. As far as the terms of the contract, very, very pleased to see, as we have requested in the past, that we are modest or moderate in our base salary offerings, while offering good opportunities for incentive compensation based on not just athletic performance, but academic performance as well, being grade point average, graduation rates, and progress rates year over year. So I thank you all for that. Any other questions or comments from the board? Then I am going to move that the board approve a multiple year employment contract for Kenny Dillingham as the head football coach of ASU. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 4 is the University of Arizona's request that the board approve the first amended multiple year employment contract for Jed Fish as head football coach at U of A. President Robbins, would you like to present?
Yes, thank you, Chair Madison and Regents. I'm excited and pleased to present this first amendment for Jed Fish's contract at the U of A as head coach of our football team. I think we all know the excitement and accomplishment that Jed has brought to our program. Completely changed the culture in the classroom, outside the classroom, and on the field for our players and our fans and students. So this contract would be for 5 years, keeping Coach Fish in place until November of 2027. His total compensation will be $2.8 million in the first year and going to $3.6 million by the 5th year of the contract. And as I said before, I hope to present many additional amendments to this contract in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, President Robbins. Any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, I am going to again publicly thank the University of Arizona this time for keeping us informed and in the loop as this process progressed from the initial stages through to the final. It always helps when we know what's moving forward so that we aren't surprised. And I agree that Coach Fish has done a good job of turning the program around in Arizona. We're looking for continued progress, and giving him this sort of stability, I think, is a good choice. And I would like to note that there have been no changes to the incentive compensation portion of this package, that we still have incentive compensation around both athletic and academic performance. Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, I'm going to move that the board approve the first amended multiple year employment contract for Jed Fish as head football coach at the University of Arizona. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Item 5 is a request from ASU to approve the individual project and financing of its West Campus new academic building project. The approximately 55,000 square foot, $33.5 million major capital project will be debt financed with system revenue bonds. The annual debt service will be paid over an approximate 30-year term and funded by tuition. Morgan Olson, I believe, is here to present.
I am, Madam Chair. Thank you. Regents, as the chair indicated, this item would authorize the university to move forward with the construction of a new academic building for the West Campus, about 55,000 gross square feet. We anticipate that it would be used for multiple academic programs and multiple instructional processes, including student gallery space, computer labs, drawing labs, faculty offices, and also include a little bit of future growth space that is part of our plan to grow the enrollment over time on the West Campus to 15,000 students. As was mentioned, we would finance this with bond issue proceeds, about $33.5 million of system revenue bonds, and we would amortize those over 30 years with tuition. The impact on the university's debt ratio is modest at 0.06%. The site that you can see in Exhibit B of your materials is immediately adjacent just to the west of Casa de Oro Phase 1. That is the last new first-year residence hall that we added on the West Campus. This site was master planned at the same time we planned and constructed Phase 1. The demand we anticipate will be from existing enrollment. As we shared previously, we had a waiting list at the start of the fall semester. In fact, still had about 43 students on the waiting list last month in November. That is part of a national trend for more students to desire to live on the campuses of the institutions that they're attending. We do anticipate that the additional residential space will be important for the reintroduction of engineering to the West Campus. We think that we can have 500 nursing students there. I think I might have said engineering, I meant nursing students by 2025. We will also have an entrepreneurial leadership program offered by the Carey School, as well as other academic programming that we anticipate bringing forward to the board shortly. This project will allow us to reprogram existing space in the CLCC building, which sits at the southeast corner of the West Campus. We'll be able to repurpose that space for various types of laboratories, which are increasing the demand on that campus with the enrollment mix that we now have. And so with that, I'll stop. And if there are questions that the board has, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you, Morgan. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Regent Herbold, you're muted again.
Yeah, I would assume, Morgan, that the availability of off-campus housing in that area is probably pretty slim, isn't it?
It tends to be a little bit further away. We only have about, if memory serves, about 673 beds on this campus. Half of those were added when we added Casa de Oro. And so this is the academic building, the actual student housing comes next, but we see this as working together for a student living and learning environment. And yes, there are not a lot of places for students to live immediately adjacent to this campus, which is one of the reasons why we think it's important to have more student housing on the campus.
Thank you.
Regent Penley?
Thank you, Chair Manson. I appreciate, Morgan, the location of the housing so near to the recreational facilities, which students would probably like, and not very distant from classrooms as well. So I think the location looks very, very good. I do have a question for you or Provost Gonzalez or for President Crow, and that is really about the vision to re-articulate that for the board as to really where we're headed with the West Campus in light of the clarity I think that we have for the Poly campus on the east side of Maricopa County.
Well, let me make a couple of comments and then invite Provost Gonzalez and President Crow, who's been able to join, to add in. We have a very significant initiative across the university to focus on the further expansion of both our Polytechnic campus in Southeast Mesa and the West Campus at the edge of Phoenix and Glendale. And so, one of the things that we think is going to help us do that is introducing additional programs that are in significant demand in the West Phoenix area, the West Valley area. We know, of course, that there are going to be demands that are placed on higher education in that area as a result of the increased semiconductor manufacturing activity that's taking place at TSMC and all of the ancillary businesses that will support it. But again, we're also responding to the need for additional nursing by reintroducing nursing to that campus, some additional programs in the Carey School and engineering. And so I would say that one of the significant differentiating factors here is adding even more programs of study that are attractive to students. But let me see what Nancy might want to add to that.
Nancy, you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, as we continue to evolve the West Campus, we have been very mindful of the developments in the surrounding communities and trying to make sure that we're bringing our interdisciplinary and integrative focus across colleges to bear in developing new degrees that will be attractive for workforce development, particularly in those areas, but also to bring new degrees that we just think are going to be more attractive to students overall, including students in Arizona, but we also think that it'll attract out-of-state students and actually even some of our international students. And in particular, we're looking at integrating degrees, say, for example, across engineering and business, across engineering and forensic sciences, and sort of taking the strengths that we already have existing there and creating new opportunities. So, we see it as a very place-based expansion, but also an expansion that meets broader needs. As an example, I will just say that in our work with some of our international partners, the kind of degrees that we're planning to develop for the West Campus in engineering and business are very much the kind of degrees that we're seeing are most attractive kind of on a global level, as well as nationally.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you. This and the next item had both come before us in the previous Finance Committee meeting, and I think the board really was looking for, at that point, as Regent Penley said, some clarity on the strategic plan that was underlying these expansions at the West Campus. And so I appreciate ASU taking the time to bring us up to speed on what the plans and why these pieces of it were important at this point in time. With that, I move that the board approve the individual project and financing of ASU West Campus new academic building project as described in the executive summary. The approximately 55,000 square foot, $33.5 million major capital project will be debt financed with system revenue bonds. The annual debt service will be paid over an approximate 30-year term and funded by tuition. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. Item 6 is another request from ASU regarding approving of a ground lease of approximately 2.36 acres of real property located at the southeast corner of 49th Avenue and Verde Mall on ASU West Campus, known as the parcel, with American Campus Communities or affiliates, ACC, for the development of third-party student housing and the right to lease all or a portion of the facility at an annual cost exceeding $1 million. I believe, Morgan, you are presenting this as well.
Yes, thank you, Chair Manson. And this, as you said, does authorize the university to enter into a public-private partnership with American Campus Communities for the delivery of an approximately 507-bed residence hall. That also was master planned at the same time we did Casa de Oro Phase 1. It'll be just to the southwest of that and immediately south of the new academic building we were just discussing. As Regent Penley recalled, we made about a $50 million investment in the West Campus a few years ago to provide more of a living and learning environment on that campus. We did a similar thing on our Polytechnic campus, adding a new dining center, adding a residence hall, and adding a Sun Devil Fitness Center to provide that kind of 24/7 kind of student experience that students are looking for when they choose to live on the campus where they study. This allows us obviously a greater capacity. I mentioned some of the challenges in terms of meeting demand for students to live on campus. Previously, the nature of this ground lease, which is the form that these P3 partnerships tend to take, is it would be a 65-year ground lease with 2 10-year options. Our pro forma with them is based, as I said, on 507 beds at about 94.5% annual average occupancy. There is both an opportunity for ground rent without performance against this pro forma, but also a requirement that if we do not hit the pro forma occupancy for an initial period, that we will make up the difference in the number of beds. Of course, we would have plenty of students to put in them. This is part of making sure that American Campus Communities is comfortable moving forward on this campus. We don't expect to have any trouble with that. We haven't to this date. As I said, we have a waiting list. And so we're looking to add to the 673 beds that we have on this campus. About half of those are the typical type of accommodations that you would have for first-year students. The other roughly half are in an apartment building that would be typically for upper division students. So this will help us particularly with first-year type students. The project itself, we think, will cost about $53.5 million. And the large majority of that money, with the exception of some site preparation, will be provided under this agreement by American Campus Community. So, Madam Chair, with that, I'll stop. And if there are questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Any questions from the board? So I have only one, and it revolves around what you just mentioned in terms of the clawback of the student housing occupancy. Has that been something that's been standard in the previous agreements with ACC and ASU?
It really varies just a little bit dependent upon location. A number of years ago, we had a multi-campus project with American Campus Communities where we took a slightly different approach, but kind of a similar intent, intended to ensure ACC that there was sufficient demand on our smaller campuses. It has tended to be fairly easy on the Tempe campus for reasons I think all the regents understand. A little bit less clear, perhaps, to our partners sometimes on our smaller campuses. I think we're growing out of that, and so this is actually customized to this particular circumstance. The fact that it's a single project and on the West Campus, but we have done similar types of things in the past.
Okay. Any other questions from the regents? Seeing none, I am going to move that the board approve Arizona State University's request for a ground lease of approximately 2.36 acres of real property located at the southeast corner of 49th Avenue and Verdi Mall on ASU West Campus with American Campus Communities or affiliates for the development of third-party student housing and the right to lease all or a portion of the facility at an annual cost exceeding $1 million. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry.
If I may, let me just express our appreciation to the board for being willing to put this on your special December agenda. This allows us to keep pushing on this project. Our hope is that we can deliver this for the fall of 2024 so that there will be more on-campus living possibilities for our students. And obviously, that's a relatively short period of time. And so this really helps us gain as much time as we possibly can to make that happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. All right, our final item today is the cost study report. And John, can you introduce that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Of the 3 items, this is the one I'm maybe least excited about. I'm still excited, Before we move into this item, wanted to circle back to Regent Herbold's question about other states. After I said I didn't know, I've had about 45 text messages, emails, and some in Zoom chats. The answer is there are 23 states that provide resident tuition to undocumented students, and 17, including Arizona, that provide financial aid. There's quite a mix. The benefits are slightly different in most of the states. There's actually a map. If you'd like, I can circulate that after the meeting. So it was,
Thank you, John.
yes, sir.
Always appreciated.
Yeah. So state law requires that the board complete a cost study once every 5 years. The last time we did this was in 2017. This cost study that is in front of you uses fiscal 2021 data. It's the last, as we started that process of putting the cost study together, that was the last full year of data that we had. It is a joint effort between the three institutions. This year, Gail Thibault from our staff led that group and put this together. It is a difficult proposition. The statute asks some very specific questions about how much we spend on what, and aligning various university assumptions and putting that together into a single document is a very difficult process that Gail did a terrific job working through that. Just a couple of things I'd point out. One, we do present a cost per student in here. Typically, when we talk to the board about expenditures per student, we use a definition called E&G, educational and general expenditures. This number is slightly different from that. It's a little bit more than what we usually look at, and that's because we included depreciation into this number to capture the capital component of educating a student. The E&G number we typically look at as a board excludes capital and just looks at that operating cost of educating a student. That's why this number is slightly higher. The other thing that this study does for the first time, we've broken out a cost per student for online education. 5 years ago, we did not have sufficient data to answer that question. It is one of the questions that the statute specifically asks for. This year, Gail was able to lead the universities through a process to nail down that number. The interesting thing is the number is fairly different for each university. And in fact, at the University of Arizona, the cost per student was slightly higher for online students than it is for on-campus students. But across all students, it was about 81% of our costs for on-campus students. So that's published and in here for, I think, the first time we've produced that number. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Gail and Brad are both here from our office. CFOs are here from the universities. If there's any specific questions for universities, happy to walk through that. Once the board approves this document, we'll submit it to the state as required by law.
Regent Herbold.
It's a very difficult task, John, to get the comparisons and making sure that people are using the proper definitions at each of the universities. How confident are you when we look across these three universities at these various charts that it truly is apples to apples?
I'll let Gail comment on that. But the degree of confidence diminishes as you drill down. So for example, the report has us break costs up between the various activities: instruction, public service, academic support, student service, institutional support. And there you're relying on the accounting staff who enters these transactions and has to decide which category any particular transaction falls into, and that individual transaction by transaction interpretation does vary between the universities. And so you'll see one university with higher than average instructional support, and it may be just some of that is how the expense was coded. Gail, do you want to comment any further on that? Brad or any of the other CFOs? You're muted, Gail.
Yeah, I would just add, a lot of this is dictated by how we report to iPads and some of the national reporting. And so there's a definition, on each one of those functional categories. And the universities do their best, to code the expenses, per those, prescriptions, from iPads. I don't know if the CFOs want to jump in on adding more to that. Nope. Okay.
I hope that answers your question, Regent Herbold, but it is difficult, and especially when we got into online expenses, we don't break those out. There's not an online educational unit that we can look at a comprehensive set of costs for that unit. We had to make some assumptions and allocate costs to that activity that under normal university accounting, we don't have to do. So there are certainly assumptions buried in this, but it was a good exercise and gives us, I think, some relevant information that we can benchmark ourselves with.
Sure, thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions from the board? So this gets submitted to the legislature, correct?
It does.
And have we anticipated questions or comments? Or are we providing, the beginning of it has an overview, so.
It does. And I would just note, last time we submitted it, we didn't get any questions or comments, nor could I find anyone that had ever read it or seen it. But it's worth, it's a good exercise.
Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you. Alrighty, given that, I am going to move that the board approve the cost study report due to the governor and the legislature by December 15th, 2022, as required by ARS 15-1650.03A. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. So that is our final item for today. Thank you all. This concludes our special board meeting and we are adjourned.